Okay, let's dive into this. Imagine waking up one morning. You've got this pounding headache, you feel absolutely terrible, and then you notice a strange fluid leaking out of your ear. Now you might think, oh, it's just a simple ear infection. But what if that fluid was actually the very first sign that your skull was literally melting away like an ice cube? As terrifying as that sounds, this is exactly where our first medical mystery begins.
Case file number 1, the vanishing bone. So, our story takes us to Tokyo. The year is 2017. A 25-year-old guy named Takuya walks into a hospital battling a super high fever, a severe headache, and, yup, fluid leaking from his right ear. But strangely enough, Takuya wasn't actually panicking. His assumption? He figured it was just another infected ear cyst. See, since he was a teenager, Takuya had this history of ear cysts, a condition known as cholestoma. He'd even had surgeries for it in the past. So in his mind, he's just thinking, great, the cyst is back and it's infected, and because he just didn't want to deal with the hassle, he didn't rush to the doctor right away. But the timeline of his symptoms escalated really quickly. For the first 2 weeks, Takuya essentially just ignored the earache. But when he finally goes in, tests reveal a terrifying reality. The infection isn't just in his ear anymore, it has spread to the tissue right surrounding his brain. The doctors immediately pumped him full of heavy antibiotics for another 2 weeks. Now, by week 5, the antibiotics actually do their job. The infection clears up. But there is a massive, glaring red flag. That fluid is still leaking from his ear. To figure out why on earth the leaking won't stop, doctors order up a pre-surgery CT scan to sort of map out the removal of this cyst. But when they actually look at the results, they have to deliver some truly horrifying news. Takuya didn't need surgery because there was no cyst to remove. Now, what's really interesting about this is the actual diagnosis. It was shocking. Takuya had a remarkably rare condition called Gorham-Stout disease. In the medical field, it is literally known as vanishing bone disease. His own body was randomly breaking down and consuming his skull. It was eating its own bone.
So the crucial point here is understanding what that leaking fluid actually was, because it wasn't drainage from an infection. It was brain fluid. His brain fluid was literally flowing right through the new holes in his skull where his bone used to be. And while there is no cure for Gorham-Stout disease, doctors miraculously managed to save him. They literally plugged the holes in his skull with a special medical glue. And amazingly, as of 2018, he was doing really well. All right, moving right along to case file number 2, the endless infection. We are jumping over to Madison, Wisconsin in 2018 to meet biologist Dan Levitas. Dan is living an absolute nightmare, and it's all represented by a single number, 6. His entire family, his wife, and his 3 young kids have caught strep throat 6 distinct times in a span of just 4 months. And as a biologist, Dan knows this absolutely should not be happening if proper protocols are being followed. I mean, Dan was doing everything right in a desperate attempt to break this cycle. He threw away all of the family's toothbrushes to prevent reinfection. He systematically disinfected every single surface in their home. He made absolutely sure that everyone took all of their prescribed antibiotics right down to the very last pill. But every single time they finished the medication, boom, the strep throat came roaring right back. And guys, the stakes were getting incredibly high. This wasn't just a recurring, scratchy, sore throat anymore. His 3-year-old daughter became so severely sick from these relentless infections that she developed pneumonia. She ended up hospitalized, hooked up to an IV, and breathing through an oxygen mask. The invisible killer in their home was pushing this family to the brink.
Dan was completely desperate. On one side, the medical experts he consulted were totally stumped, and they were completely dismissive of this quote-unquote crazy theory put forward by Dan's mother, who, by the way, happened to be a retired pediatrician. Frustrated that the so-called experts wouldn't listen, Dan throws a total Hail Mary. He reaches out to a medical student at the University of Wisconsin, just hoping someone with a fresh set of eyes would listen to his mom's unconventional theory.
And they did. They tested one specific thing in the house that had been completely overlooked, and they found the 6th victim of the strep outbreak. It was the family cat. No way, right? But this was the unseen carrier constantly reinfecting the family. Most vets at the time didn't even believe it was possible for cats to catch or spread strep to humans. But this cat was for sure the carrier. Once the family cat was given a round of antibiotics, the cycle was finally broken, and the whole family stayed healthy for good. Which brings us to our final and honestly most chilling story. Case file number 3, the death house. We land in Germany. The year is 1964. Charlotte Lawrence is living a waking nightmare. She has just lost both of her parents on the exact same day. Now, the initial medical assumption provided this tidy, albeit tragic, explanation. The doctor told the family that Charlotte's father had suffered a sudden heart attack and that her mother had suffered a secondary heart attack immediately following, brought on by the sheer shock of witnessing her husband's death. So, Charlotte and her husband fly in from Wisconsin to grieve and handle the estate.
Let's move to how this builds, because it is terrifying. Charlotte, her husband, and a really kind neighbor named Caroline are at the apartment. Caroline is cooking dinner for the grieving couple, and Uncle Dieter is supposed to join them. Well, when Dieter arrives and knocks, there's no answer. He can hear the TV playing inside, but no voices. So he lets himself into the apartment and walks into an eerily quiet kitchen. And there he finds Charlotte, her husband, and Caroline, all sitting at the table with half-eaten plates of food. They are perfectly still, just staring straight ahead. They are all dead. That tidy medical explanation of broken hearts, yeah, it was completely wrong. A broken pipe under the kitchen sink was actively leaking highly toxic sewer gas directly into the apartment. It was this invisible gas that had poisoned Charlotte's parents in the first place. And then, tragically, it poisoned everyone else who simply sat down for dinner. The apartment earned the grim title of the Death House. And Uncle Dieter, he only survived because he arrived late to dinner and ran out to call for help the absolute second he saw them. Conclusion. Hidden dangers. You know, this brilliantly illustrates the core theme of this explainer. The most terrifying threats we face aren't always the obvious ones. Sometimes the deadliest dangers are completely hidden from our view. I mean, it could be a rare malfunction of our own immune systems, a beloved family pet harboring a stealthy bacteria, or even the very air circulating right beneath our kitchen sink. It's absolutely wild to realize how the things we cannot see are so often the most dangerous. So I leave you with this final chilling thought to ponder. Based on what we've learned today about these invisible killers, what unseen threat might you be sitting next to right now? Think about it and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me to explore these bizarre medical mysteries.